there's been a big stuff that's coming out these last couple weeks, and it's mainly to do with baseball. Is baseball making a huge comeback right now? Baseball has been dominating the charts. Called the World Baseball Classic, the hangover from that, and everybody's so excited. But what do you guys think about this? I mean, if you look on the graphic we have on the screen here, the World Baseball Classic had about 10.8 million, where the entire NBA Finals had about 10.2 million. And this is just a tournament that really means nothing. Tim, and when you were talking about before, I know you're a big baseball guy. What do you think this is the new trend? Is baseball finally back and taking over the NBA, or is it more of an NBA problem?
Let me start by just saying how surprised I am by all this. You could also go back to the World Series last year. I think the last 2 years, the World Series has vastly outperformed the NBA.
Game 7?
So, yeah, exactly. You had a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, and it still didn't even touch what, the World Series was doing. So I'm really surprised by this. Let me go back like a little bit. I think Major League Baseball for a long stretch of time made like just some of the worst decisions. Like they could not get out of their own way. And I still think you see shadows of that. They make decisions all the time where I'm just floored by how bad and how blind they are to some of this stuff. So I am really surprised to see that they've been able to turn a corner with some of this. Whereas, I think the NBA had made a lot of good decisions, 10 years ago, but the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie in terms of ratings, in terms of TV contracts that are going around. There's a lot of pieces of evidence to show that, man, baseball's really having a moment. Now, I want to say one thing. I think part of it is a little bit of luck with matchups that we've had. World Baseball Classic aside, although that's another good example because you had the U.S., going to the finals. But the last 2 World Series, you've had the Dodgers and the Yankees, 2 massive markets, 2 very storied teams, lots of star power on both teams. And then you have the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, which has this sort of U.S. versus Canada aspect to it. You've kind of got a David versus Goliath thing because people were starting to sour on the Dodgers. So I think baseball, these matchups sort of fell into their lap to have this incredible, really big run with the World Series. NBA, on the other hand, had the Thunder and the Pacers last year. No disrespect to those teams or those fans, but I think diehard NBA fans were excited about that. But does the average sports fan, are they able to name more than 3 players on either of those teams? I don't know. So I think part of it was circumstance. I've got a weird perspective on this, and I don't know if this fuels like the massive rating shift, but it's just something I've noticed. I used to do some consulting for the Premier Lacrosse League. Hard to draw parallels between MLB and NBA there. But the one thing they did really well and that they understood was that a big part of their revenue was going to come from merch. And a big part of those merch sales was having a really good social media presence that highlighted their sales, that highlighted their stars. And it was really geared towards younger crowds. It was geared towards, 10 to 15-year-old boys who were really getting into lacrosse, wanted to stunt at school and wear the latest and greatest. That's how they made a lot of their money. What's weird, though, is that parallel shows up in some of the bigger leagues. With baseball, the NBA, and football. Yes, the TV contracts are a huge source of revenue, but those are like 10 to 15-year deals. So you are locked into that money for huge stretches of time. Year over year, it's hard to kind of find too many growth levers because the TV money is baked in sometimes a decade in advance. Ticket sales, kind of the same thing. Yeah, that can fluctuate, but every stadium has a fixed amount of tickets that they can sell. So ticket sales have kind of a cap too. So what's their growth lever? It's the merch. It's selling to young kids who want to have like that 3rd and the 4th jersey. And what I think baseball has done really well is lean into that. They've had the City Connect jerseys. And whatever you have to say about those things get a lot of buzz online. A lot of the kids love them. And even if they've got 3 or 4 Aaron Judge jerseys, guess what? They want the City Connect too. And I think that they've done a really good job of branding themselves, creating an army of walking advertisements for the sport. I don't know if that's why you've seen their ratings just completely dwarf basketball, but it is something that I think they've finally started to get right. It also helps that they finally fixed the issue of not having games last 4 hours long. They really cut down on that. I think that was a smart move. Whereas the NBA, who I used to think used to be really on top of that, seems to just be having, these swings and misses, no pun intended. The NBA Cup, I think, was something that they thought was going to be this big splash. And again, diehard NBA fans probably love it, but I think the average fan is just confused. Like, why am I looking at this freaking neon laser tag style court all of a sudden playing for this tournament? I don't really understand. I guess they go to Vegas. What does that have to do with anything? So it's weird, man. It's like they flip-flopped. Credit to Theo Epstein. I think the MLB hired him to kind of course correct and make a lot of better decisions for the average fan experience. I think he probably deserves a lot of credit. You asked the question of like, is this a crisis for the NBA? I don't know, man. I don't know what they do. We're looking at another year where it's probably going to be the Thunder representing the West, and NBA fans probably love that. But do NBA execs love that Oklahoma City is going to represent, half of the finals viewership?
Yeah. See, I'm gonna go a little bit different approach on the, because I feel like that it's more of, I think the MLB has finally got stars back. And I think that the MLB has finally nailed some of these guys. You got Aaron Judge, who, I'm a Red Sox fan, so I hate the Yankees, but yet I still like Aaron Judge whenever he's up the bat. He's so massive and he doesn't come off cocky. I enjoy watching him, even though I want him to strike out every time, but he's a great player. Shohei Ohtani is one of the biggest stars in the world right now. It just seems like an approachable dude. You got the younger generation. You got the Ellie Deli Cruzes and the Ronald Acuñas, and these guys are bringing this flair, but it comes off as fun. And I think with the NBA, it's becoming more annoying because you got your superstars, and all it seems like they're doing is complaining that they don't get the calls. And the three-point shot, that has really kind of messed things up for the NBA, although it is kind of cool whenever you got these guys. There's only one Steph Curry, and everybody wants to be Steph Curry's all of a sudden, and there is only one, and he can make it look really cool, and he can shoot it and all that good stuff, but it's kind of boring for viewership if they keep on missing them. If they're hitting them, it's exciting as hell. But I think that that's a problem, though, is that the product is kind of watered down a little bit right now, and I think they're running out of stars that are relatable, and I think that Victor Wembanyama is going to be such an important person going forward for the NBA because of the attitude that he brings. That dude wants to win so bad, and he reminds me of like that old school generation of basketball players that the old heads and the young heads can both get around. So I think Victor is going to have to wear a cape on his back. Luka should be that guy, but he comes off extremely irritating to everybody that he's not on your team with all the crying and the yelling at the refs and everything like that. Anthony Edwards, if you get him, it's always gone back and forth on here. I find Anthony Edwards just annoyingly overrated, but that's just me. But he is a damn good player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I don't buy into the whole that he's the great. Like I don't relate to it. I don't like him. I'm not much like that. I'm trying to think. I said that probably the wrong way, but you get the idea what I'm saying. It's a love-hate kind of thing. I think he's a damn good player. I'm really that established. I think he's good, but it just drives me nuts. But I think it's a star power issue that the NBA is running into, that the Steph Currys are leaving. Love or hate LeBron. LeBron was such a major part of this. But all those guys that they were banking on everything on are all starting to leave and retire. And the younger generation, I don't think there is that guy that people are looking up to right now. Maybe Vic, but Cooper Flag maybe or something. But I think that's a big problem too, is that MLB finally has got stars back again, and it's bringing people back to the parks, and the product has been good. And I think that's the other thing as well, is that the product has been damn good. That World Series last year was one of the best World Series I've ever seen. It was crazy. Even the one before that, with Freddie Freeman, and there was just so many great moments that's like, okay, I can see why people are watching this. I still think the season is too long, but there's also time to improve. The pitch count clock has drastically improved everything, and it's so noticeable now. Whenever you walk up whenever you're watching the game, like, damn, they're already pitching again. So I think that's a big thing, is that star power and MLB finally, and I think you were right, Theo Epstein helping out with everything. And they finally started getting things right. Even the All-Star game is still exciting. Those guys want to win. And I think there's a will. And these guys are making a boatload of money, but yet they're out there playing because they understand it's a kid's game.
I think it's because the MLB is listening to their fans and the NBA is not. I feel like the last 4 or 5 years, it's been the same stuff with the NBA. The ticky-tack fouls, the foul baiting, I'm going to start crying if you don't start giving me calls. Oh, I can't play hard defense because then the ref is going to give it to this guy and he's going to go through the free throw line 47 times. I mean, shout out to Ben Adebayo scoring 83 points. That's my dog. Always represent Miami. But, dude, 40 free throws is like, wow, man. Like, is it really his fault or is it the ref's fault? You know, that's a whole different conversation that we can have another day. But I just feel like they're not listening to their fans on the stuff that they want to change. And you lost a lot of the old heads, a lot of the new heads. Obviously, you know, I feel like a lot of them love basketball just like myself and us. I feel like they love basketball and they love the game for sure. But a lot of the old heads are going away from the game because it's just too soft. It really is. It's just too soft. And with the MLB, the old heads always loved baseball, America's pastime for a reason. And now, to Tim's point, they're going crazy on social media. They're relating to the young fans like crazy. The World Baseball Classic really brought families together. If you really think about it, all these third world countries that can't do the same things that we do, Venezuela, Ecuador, Honduras, or whatever. I know they weren't in the Baseball Classic, but DR, like these big time teams for these small time countries came to the United States and started doing their thing. They started playing the offensive game of baseball with so much pride and an excitement that you saw when they go up against USA. They're just there like, and then the Hispanic teams are going crazy, going wild. Even Japanese teams, the Chinese teams, they're going crazy. They're representing their own country. And that's just what made it more exciting for baseball fans to see. You saw it in 2023, and you just saw it now this past, what was it, like 2 months ago? That, bro, it just showed so much excitement for the MLB. And then with the rule changing, bro, making the game faster, making more runs, making more stolen bases. The ABS challenge is freaking magnificent to me, if you really think about it. I know a lot of people are complaining about the umpires and stuff, but let's be real. The umpires call the game 90% of the time fair and good. You know, the other 10%, we're human. It is what it is. But
I want to say like 97% of the time they're right.
Exactly. But just to put that on a nutshell, man, the MLB is listening to their fans and the NBA is not, and which is why they are in a crisis. I agree. They really are in a crisis because if they don't really wake up and start fixing some stuff and letting guys play freaking defense, bro, they're going to lose a lot of money and a lot of fans.
I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I can remember the 2009, I want to say, Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It was Lakers Celtics. You know, it was one of Kobe's last titles. That game was ugly. It was scratching and clawing. I think the final score was like 89 to 82 or something like that. I totally agree that those are the kinds of basketball games that are actual like theater, where there's actual drama and you can feel it, and it's just hard scrap actual basketball being played. You know, I think one thing where I think the NBA probably got this wrong, this might have been an inflection point, was they watched the NFL shift their rules towards more offense because they were making so much off of fantasy football. They were getting so much, you know, good attention, new eyeballs because of all this passing, all these passing yards that were, you know, materializing all of a sudden. They had made changes to, you know, where DBs couldn't get away with as much on passing interference, couldn't hit the quarterback. All of a sudden you see passing yards kind of go through the roof, and that made a lot of the fantasy owners happy. The NBA tried to follow suit, but what's happened is exactly what you're describing, G-Mike. It's not a better product. It's just more opportunities to go to the free throw line. The players are smart. They've figured it out. It's less of an entertaining product in the name of just more points on the board. I don't know what we do to fix that. Maybe gambling is going to fill that void, and we just start, you know, finding different prop bets that tilt the scales and tilt the rules towards a more entertaining product. But I completely agree. The game's not what it was, you know, 15 or 20 years ago. I think that's why the old heads prefer college basketball, is because it's more of an actual game being played and less gamesmanship, where you're just trying to draw a foul any way you can, shoot 40 free throws a game.
Yeah,
insane.
Yeah, and I want to go back to a little bit with baseball as well. As I think the effort is there as well, and I know that the NBA is trying to figure out their All-Star weekend and all that good stuff, and it got a little bit better this year. That tournament thing was still confusing, but you had some players that were trying to take it a little bit more serious. but the home run derby still is awesome. And they were able to, they made it a little bit shorter. They did it with the timeouts and all that stuff. It still is awesome what these guys are able to do because it is still one of the hardest things to do to hit a baseball. I don't care what anybody says. Golf ball, baseball, those are some hard sports to play. So to see these guys just absolutely crush balls out there, that is a great thing. And I think that the effort comes back into it as well because that they want to win that All-Star game and they represent it. And it's not for like a huge amounts of money or anything. It's about pride, and they really do appreciate what they have and what they got going on. So I think that baseball is just in a better spot right now. The young players are doing really well, and it's just clicking right now. I haven't been this excited about baseball in quite some time. It might just, like we were saying before, maybe because of doing that post-World Baseball Classic. But even going back to that World Baseball Classic, it was great because you took a game that was pretty meaningless. I mean, it means nothing to anybody except for pride, but that was such huge ratings, and I was dying to watch the next week. Italy was a great story, Australia was a cool story. You got these guys that really just want to play. And like, I loved how all the players were talking about this is such an important thing to do for your country. It was awesome. It was awesome to see. So I think that's a lot to do with it as well, is just effort and pride in it. And I think the NBA players kind of somewhat take it for granted that they're so athletic and so great at what they do that it just doesn't seem like they really care as much sometimes until the playoffs start. Playoff basketball is another story for the most part, but it just seems like baseball, they want it more.
Oh, the World Baseball Classic was great. I'm so glad that tournament ended like 2 weeks ago, and like I'm still thinking about it a lot. That was such a great tournament. Yeah. Remember that Czech pitcher who's like an electrician full time and plays baseball as a hobby, but every 3 years gets to pitch against Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah,
how great was that?
That kid that was like 19 years old, I think, from Panama or something like that. Like crazy. Imagine going back to school and be like, "Yo, I pitched against Ohtani, dude." Like,
seriously.
Yeah. There was some great storylines out of that. But, Stevie, back to your point about stars for baseball, too. That probably has a lot to do with it. I think you nailed it. Remember, like, 2014 when baseball's trying so hard to make Mike Trout, as big a deal as LeBron James and as big a deal as Peyton Manning? And no shade to Mike Trout. He's a great player, but, like, he's not out there. He's not, schmoozing. He's not, doing funny TV spots. He's like the most milquetoast guy ever who just wants to lift weights, get on base, play well. He doesn't want anything else. And so, I think we're in a place now where, we do have a lot more marketable stars. You've got a lot more, interesting, I don't want to call them gimmicks, but a lot of interesting dynamics. I'm glad you brought up the All-Star game. Remember the swing off to finish the game last year? They had to have the home run.
That should be extra innings every single time. Get your two best home run hitters, and that's how you end extra inning games. That would be awesome.
That's sick. That's sick, honestly.